Oh, no.
Steve, we are up to 27 folks at 1:03 p.m. and I'll remind, as I do every week, that we are recording and for posterity's sake, and I will cut out any personal health information that gets mentioned. I would say I know that Chuck Brown is tired for some reason, but we'll talk about that later. So, Steve, I'm going to mute off and turn it over to you.
I'm tired for some reason.
It's all yours, Steve. All
right. Good afternoon, everybody. And I am calling you from my new office in our new home. It's a closet with a desk in it, and I've got doors on either side. It's in our hallway leading out to our garage, but it makes a good spot to, at least it's not in the garage like it used to be. So glad to have all of you with us. Let's see, I think Ed is our chaplain. Do we have any concerns that we need to have included in the invocation other than Rick Smith and his family having lost his mother? I don't see anybody's hands going up. Ed, unmute yourself and please lead us in an invocation.
Well, I just wanted to say before we started, I appreciate George Thompson's help in crafting this particular prayer. So if everyone will sit down, make yourself comfortable, we should be through in about 5 minutes. If you could join me, please, though, in sincerity, in an opening prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we invoke the blessing upon this meeting and the people of goodwill everywhere. May we prove ourselves worthy citizens of our country, devoted to truth, sincere in fellowship, given to service, and confident in steadfast faith. Preserve us faithful to these ideals. Let us stand firm when the fight is hard. Give us strength sufficient to this day. Make us big as our problems, and to stay bigger than our responsibilities. God, help us live up to our capabilities. Amen.
Thank you, Ed and George. Last time I saw, there was a TBA for our Sergeant at Arms. Has that announcement been made?
It has. It is Mark Clasby.
Mark, thank you. If you'll unmute yourself.
All right, try again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the four-way test, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
This week, I did not want to miss the chance for Happy Dollars because I did last meeting that we had. So I'd open the floor for any Happy Dollar declarations today. Stevie Brown. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I have Happy Dollars. I would love to contribute $20 today because my oldest son, Stephen Michael, and his lovely wife, Elisa, brought Avery Fisher Brown into this world on Monday, November 30th. And they are both now at home. And Lolly and Pop, which is our grandparents' names, were able to mask up, face shield up, and gowns on. And we were able to go by and visit last night for about 20 minutes and hold our 7th grandchild on last night. So I'm very excited about that. They're doing well, and we're very excited, and we're going to have another one come March. So it's the Brown clan is getting ready to take over Haywood County. So just be prepared.
Very good, Steve.
Thank
Who
you.
else? I guess I should put in $5 for a Georgia Tech football game last week. We took on one of those blue teams, And it was real close at halftime, but we kind of walked away in the second half. So I'll put in $5 for our victory over Georgia, over Duke.
I saw Paul Irvin put in a negative $5 to counteract your $5.
He may have to pay $5 for that thumbs down. Any other happy dollars? Not seeing any, we will close happy dollars out. Thank you very much. Announcements. Bill Alsbrook asked for the floor to talk to us about our blanket drive. Bill has worked very hard with Mountain Projects and with Patsy to pull this together, and they've come up with at least 2 ways that we can participate in a blanket drive this year. So Bill,
Okay.
you'll unmute yourself and give us the current information.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. As Cecil said this morning and Rotary spoke, our club has been doing this blanket drive since 2008. And I've kind of headed it up the last couple of years. So I'm a late arriver here. But this is an unusual time trying to figure, everyone's aware that there's a great need for blankets, but how to go about it. And there are 2, we've worked this out with Patsy Davis and with Steve and Cecil. The recommended one is the Amazon route. And to order the blankets from Amazon and have them shipped to Mountain Projects, just as you would to any other place. That's the recommended way. And if you do that, you have the recipient's address, right? Mountain Projects, and this will go out also this afternoon. Cecil's going to send another thing to everybody. After Mountain Projects, put in parentheses blankets. Just write the word blankets, and then they'll know what that is when it comes there. The second way, some of you may have some gently worn blankets that you want to contribute. In that case, just take them directly to Mountain Projects office, and they're directly across the street from Junaluska School, and tell them that they're blankets from Rotary. So they're the 2 ways. But if with the Amazon address, be sure when you say Mountain Projects, you put blankets in parentheses afterwards. And I hope we'll have a good turnout this year. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. I think we mentioned in the past that there's a district-wide coat drive, coat and blanket. And Patsy feels like the blankets are more versatile because you can wrap up in them and use them as a coat. So we've decided we would stick with the blankets. The other 2 clubs in Haywood County are also participating, and they've worked out their own arrangements about getting their blankets to Mountain Projects. Thank you, Bill, for you've been dogging this very closely for a couple of months, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chuck Brown, you want to bring us up to date on the bell ringing?
Absolutely. We kicked off today at 10 o'clock. And I'll say that in my experience, people are much more generous this year than I've ever seen. And I think it's just the times, and it's right in the forefront of everybody's mind. But it was really encouraging. And if you haven't signed up, I think you'd enjoy taking your hour. We are full except for next Saturday at Walmart. We've got 5 spaces and 2 at best on Saturday afternoon.
This is Paul Irvin. I just took the 3 o'clock spot, I believe, if that's still open, right? Cecil, wasn't that right? 3 o'clock?
That's correct. And Chuck, we've had a couple of updates. We have 2 spots open at Walmart on next Saturday, 4 to 5, 5 to 6. and next Saturday at Belk, 3 to 4 and 4 to 5. Those are our last remaining slots that we have open.
Very good, Chuck. I took the 2 hours ahead of you on Saturday at Walmart, 1 to 3. So if Paul Irvin is taking 3 to 4 at Belk's, and we're down to 3 slots, 2 at Walmart and 1 at Belk. So thank all of you for your participation. Is Bill Cole on today?
I'm due to be there at 2 o'clock today. We're still outside the grocery store, right? The grocery part of Walmart.
Yes.
And there's no change in the way we're doing it with the COVID virus. Same way we've always done it.
Now, Cecil, you have me down for Belk or Walmart?
Let me address Paul first.
Yeah.
Paul, yes, there were some changes. There was a link to a video. Chuck is probably better to tell you the differences. I think one is you're not supposed to handle the money, but let's let Chuck do an update on that. And
Okay.
Paul Irvin, you're down 3 to 4 at Walmart.
Walmart, that's what I thought. The other thing is, if people put in a check, which hopefully so few will, should it be made out to Salvation Army, right? Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, we've got that link, which I think is working now, Cecil. I got to view it, so.
Tried to find it and couldn't find it.
Well, he sent it out earlier, and the first one did not work. So, go back and check your email from Cecil. He did send it out the second time. So, if not, I'm sure he'd be happy to send it to you.
Paul has to cover 2 o'clock this afternoon. So can you give him a synopsis of what he needs to do?
Well, what I was going to say is you need to wear a mask, and you need not touch the money. Let them put it in. And if I were you, I'd wear gloves, not only because it's a little cool, but just, for protection, extra protection. But everybody is putting their money in the bucket just like they need to, and we're not having to touch it, or at least I didn't this morning.
The other thing that I would say that's new, at least I don't remember it from last year, is that people can make contributions with their smartphone. If they know how to use a smartphone QR scanner, they could take a picture of the code which is on the sign right there. That'll take them directly to a contribution page for the Waynesville Salvation Army. And I made a contribution this morning that way. You definitely don't want to have people who are technologically timid trying to do it, but it can work. So if somebody walks up and says, I'd make a contribution, but do you take credit cards? And the answer is yes, we do take credit cards as long as you can use your smartphone to make that transaction.
Thank you, Jack. Very good update. If I'm not mistaken, Leroy Robertson is trying to join us from Walmart as he rings the bell. That's what it looks like in the picture that I see down there when he was when he had his picture up a few minutes ago. Anything else on bell ringing? All right, Tom Napco, is he online today to talk to us about our baskets?
He is not. Mike McKinney is here, and if Mike doesn't have the report, I have it. But Mike, if you've got it, you unmute and go ahead.
Talked to Tom this morning. I think that what I remember is that we're still about 140 baskets short on money. Still looking for any help that we can get. So volunteers will be great on delivery date. if you feel that you can contribute additional baskets above and beyond what you've already done, that will be welcome. And Tom and myself, Cecil, all of us appreciate the help that we've had so far. Is that about what you got, Cecil?
Yes, that is. And I would just add to that this morning I posted an update on our Facebook page, which goes out more to the general public, and asked for assistance from the public with how to make that happen. So we'll hope we get some support in from the general public as well.
Cecil, this is Ed. What is the delivery date this year? You may have posted it already, but I haven't seen it.
I believe it's the 22nd. Is that right, Mike?
That's what I said.
22nd?
I think Mike's going to verify that or correct it.
That's what it said on the spoke report that it was published this morning.
Okay, well, similar to being on the internet, it's true. If it's in the spoke, it's true.
Okay, thank all of you for participating in the Christmas baskets. We, with 530 something people on the list, obviously there's a huge need out there. Let's see, Bill Owen, does he have a man of report, or Cecil, do you have one for him?
Yes, I have Bill's. His power's been fluctuating on him today. They delivered 280 food bags today. He and Charles Umberger. I'm not sure if Bill by himself did 4 schools and Charles did more, or if they did a total of 4. I wasn't clear on that, but I think the 280 bags was the total for everything.
Very good. I suppose that will continue to expand as more students are signing up for it or something, because that's a small number compared to what we used to do. Any other announcements?
Yes, President Steve. Mark Bumgarner here.
Yes, Mark.
Yes, just wanted to mention Open Door. This month, we will do the Open Door, and it's going to be on December the 24th. That's Christmas Eve. So I wanted to mention that a little early and see if you can't encourage everyone to put that date on their calendar and spend a couple hours in the kitchen at the Open Door. And we'll, of course, have other announcements as the month rolls along, but wanted to get that out there to get people starting to think about that. Thank you.
Mark, this Larry Leatherwood. Sign me up.
Okay, gotcha.
Sign me up too, Mark.
Okay, Steve, got you down.
Steve, I have 2 additional reports.
All right, you're on board.
All right. I've remained in touch with Taylor Barnhill, who did our presentation a couple of weeks ago on the barns of Madison County. And he asked the name of one of our Rotarians who asked about the David Lacey barn collection. And I did not know who that was. Paul, was that you? Okay, you don't have.
Yes, that's correct. Do you want me to call him?
Yes, if you would. He asked if you'd get in touch with him.
Okay, okie dokie. I may need to call you later for a number, okay?
Yeah, I can give you his email. I don't have a phone, but I can.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Taylor also wanted.
I was going to say, I actually sent that information to Taylor the very day that he gave the report, and I think I copied the email to Paul, but I'll check again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rick.
Who is that? Was that you, Rich? You sent
Rick,
me that? Okay,
Rick.
Great. I'll find it.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you. That'll help. So don't worry. I'll get in touch with him. Thank you.
All right. And Taylor also asked me to let our members know that they are doing personal small group barn tours again at a cost of $45 per person, if anyone is so interested in taking advantage of that. In a totally unrelated announcement, putting on my treasurer's hat, I would let you know that we're approaching the end of the quarter. I'm getting ready to send out the third notice for those of you who have not yet paid your account down. January bill is going to be big this year, and I encourage you to go ahead and cover the one right now so January's not so big. But be on the lookout for those of you who have not yet paid your bill, because you'll be getting it shortly. Thank you. Steve, I think I should probably quit on that.
That's a good one to finish on. Let's see, any other announcements? Okay, if not, Billy Case, I think, is our program chairman this month. Is he online to introduce his speaker?
John Keith is doing it.
Okay, John.
Thank you, President Steve. Excited to have Justin allow us to reschedule him for today. It's a program that I know I've been looking forward to, and something definitely unusual and exciting to hear about. Most of you may already know that he is the titled as Mountain Regional District Wildlife Biologist for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Justin got his Bachelor of Science in Zoology, and then later his Master of Science in Wildlife and Conservation Biology from NC State, where he studies food habits of coyotes and red wolves in eastern North Carolina. He's been employed by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission since 2005, holding the positions of captive cervid biologist, wildlife technician, permits biologist, and the recent position of district wildlife biologist. The district includes the western 12 counties of North Carolina. The duties of district biologist include providing technical guidance to landowners regarding wildlife, technical assistance regarding nuisance wildlife, development and review of hunting and trapping regulations, and monitoring of wildlife populations, including the management of North Carolina's elk herd on private and public land. He indicates while not answering phone calls about bears being in homeowners' trash cans, he enjoys spending as much time as he can in the woods with his 2 boys and wife. Excited. I don't know how we're going to get this down into 30 minutes, Justin. You could talk an hour and a half minimum on all 3 of these subjects, if not more. Very few people know that I'm one of the few Rotarians in this club that actually married a young lady whose family had a private zoo. In fact, the picture next to me here shows her holding a lion cub, and we sold a ostrich and a tame camel to Jim Fowler, who you may be old enough to remember Wild Kingdom. And Jim Fowler was the young buck that used to take care of all the wrestling of the animals, and he came with his wife. Actually, his brother came with his wife, and I had video, which unfortunately I've lost, showing how he wrangled an ostrich into a horse trailer. So being a zoologist, I'm sure you would have enjoyed some of the animals that they had. My father-in-law was also not only a physician, but a wild game and fish commissioner, and they did house some injured animals. I forget the term for that, where they were licensed to take care and rehab some deer, I remember. But anyway, in the interest of time, take it away, Justin. Glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
I also have some ostrich experience. My wife, her family raised ostriches, and I think that's how I kind of won over her dad's heart. Was he was needing some help holding some ostriches down, and you know, I'm 6'6", so he picked the big guy to come over, and threw my arm over this ostrich, and then the veterinarian, you know, went up the back end, and the ostrich threw me against the barn, and I guess he kept me around though, so I guess that was a good experience. So Today I was asked just to talk about elk, so I'm just going to start on that. If we have time and you guys have questions about anything else, feel free to ask. So let's see if I can share my screen here.
You can. You have permissions.
Okay. And let's get started on that. All right. Are you guys seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about North Carolina elk. The request was to kind of give an update of elk. And I'm going to start off with just a little bit of history, just in case you guys aren't aware of the history of elk in North Carolina. So originally, way back when, elk inhabited all of the eastern United States. It was the eastern elk, and they are all extinct in North Carolina. That extinction happened in the late 1700s, basically due to overhunting and habitat loss. So fast forward to modern times, 2001 and 2002, the National Park Service, which I am not a part of, decided to reintroduce elk and see if they could have a viable, sustainable herd in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. The reason I made that distinction that I'm not the Park Service is a lot of folks get all of us confused. They think I work for the Forest Service or the Park Service or some other entity, but I work for the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, which is the state agency responsible for the conservation of wildlife in North Carolina. So in 2001, 2002, there were 52 elk that were reintroduced. There was supposed to be a third installment of elk, but a disease called chronic wasting disease started showing up east of the Mississippi. So we stopped all importation of deer or cervids, elk included, into North Carolina to prevent the spread of that disease. And here is the 2015 map of the elk range. You guys know this area real well. So you can see the purple is the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and then that little dot is Cataloochee, where the elk were housed and released initially. So during that first little period, they dubbed it an experimental period. And during that time, the National Park Service handled all the management of elk on and off of the park. So if there was a nuisance situation off of the Park Service handled it. If there was a death of an elk hit by a motor vehicle or whatever, Park Service handled it. So after about 5 years, the Park Service deemed that this experiment and this experimental period was over. They deemed their project a success. And then they basically turned over management of elk to the respective entities. So Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians will take care of management of elk on tribal lands, Park Service, of course, on Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And then the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission manages elk everywhere else. So game lands, Forest Service, and private land. We updated this map in 2018 to try to reflect a little bit more accurately where the elk are. The elk range is really dictated by where the elk are moving and not really where we want them to go. We've just kind of let them go wherever they want. But what we're looking at is about 200,000 acres area, you know, all the way from Whittier up past Harmon Den. It's starting to go into Madison County, up towards that Harmon Den area. We collar elk, started that in 2012 when I first started out here. Collar elk for a few reasons. One is to kind of get to keep tabs on the different subherds throughout the range. We could also get some spatial ecology stuff, so looking at habitat use, home range, all those things that will help us manage elk better. Each one of these dots represents a location. The collars that we put on our GPS, they are programmed to take a location every 4 hours, and then they are uploaded once a day to the computer, hopefully, And that's what these dots are, just a few of those different animals. This is not one animal. This is numerous animals. As a side note, there's in the middle, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but coming kind of northeast out of Cataloochee, you'll see a line of dots, and then it kind of congregates here. That's the Harmon Den Bridge. This was actually a one-time movement of a cow from Cataloochee that I went into the Park Service, or into the park with the Park Service, collared a cow. She made her way out to the Harmon Den exit, hung out, went back to the park, hung out there for a while, and then one day just made a beeline and crossed under the bridge there at Harmon Den. And she's established a herd, and that's the rest of her dots up there in the top northeast corner. And there's about 15 or 20 elk hanging out in that area. So that's just kind of a neat movement that we saw. One of the questions, to kind of get into the update of how the elk are doing and what are the elk doing, people are always asking me, how many elk do you have? And that's a very, very difficult thing to answer. It's really difficult to get an accurate count. So in the western states, they will count elk by flying over fields with a helicopter or a plane, and they can just look down and count the animals. Obviously, that doesn't work here with as much forest as we have. So we rely on a thing called a minimum count, which is really, really basic and not really great, but it's all we got for right now. And essentially what we do in conjunction with the Park Service and the Eastern Band of Cherokee, 2 days in a row, in the morning and in the evening, we spread out all over places that we think there might be elk or have seen elk, and we literally just count the elk. This isn't as easy as it seems. In this picture, there is an elk, and it may be hard to see on the screen. I don't know, but we'll go to this next picture, and maybe you can see under that arrow some antlers sticking up. And I knew there was an elk here because I had a GPS collar, has a VHF frequency. So I knew this fellow was there, stepped out of the truck, still couldn't see him. I could smell him. I knew he was around. And it took me a while, and then I finally caught those antlers. So as I said, that minimum count's not a really great way of counting elk, but there are better ways, albeit more expensive. So right now we're trying to develop a new way of doing it using DNA in the feces of elk. So we have hired on University of Tennessee to do a project. We've got a graduate student out here, and we've got several objectives. One is the population estimate, which is important, but probably more important is through this project, we're going to get survival, recruitment, and growth. Those are those parameters that really tell us how the elk population is doing. And so we're doing this through what's called a spatially explicit capture-recapture method. It's just a fancy way of saying we're picking up poop and getting the DNA off of it. So we've already had one field season. Our next field season is coming up. Within that elk range, we've got 450 transects just sporadically put out, randomly assigned, just straight lines. And we go out there and we walk those straight lines and pick up elk poop. So something I'm sure my mother and father are real proud of, using that master's degree to pick up poop, but getting some good information from it. So hopefully we'll have some preliminary numbers here soon when we get the results back from the lab. But so this project is set up to end in 2023, and we're on track. Hopefully by that time we'll meet all these objectives and get all these different parameters that we're interested in. So what are some of the issues that we need to overcome here with the elk? One of the biggest ones is habitat. As you guys know, elk are grazers. They need fields, they need open spaces. And what's lacking in Western North Carolina is fields and open spaces. and the fields and open spaces that we do have are typically on private land. This is a field off of Cove Creek Road. And so we really want to focus on getting quality elk habitat in the correct places. And for us, the correct places means game lands or on Forest Service lands, places that we can manage the habitat for the elk. So this is in Maggie Valley. This is the William H. Silver game land that was purchased. It's about 2,000 acres. Part of it was slated to be a ski resort, and that's what these green lines up in the right corner are. There are actually some areas that had already been cut, and so when we got this property, all we had to do in there, was go in and kind of reclaim those ski slopes, plant them, and put some quality habitat on the ground. We're doing the same thing with the Forest Service. Recently, the Forest Service has done a revision plan on the 12-mile section of the forest, and we were an integral part of that, and really pushing for more elk habitat. And the reason that we push so hard for elk habitat is that, yeah, it's great for elk, but it's also great for a whole suite of species. And so people get really excited when they hear elk. And the Forest Service was really excited about having elk projects. But as a wildlife biologist and as the agency that's responsible for conservation of all wildlife, if the elk use it, great. And if they don't, I don't care, because like I said, there's bear, turkey, deer, songbirds, all these other suites of wildlife species are going to use that habitat. And this is some of the work that has happened on the Forest Service land. We got this machine called a Fecon. Went through, kind of thinned out some of the woods, which lets more sunlight to the floor, lets more herbaceous stuff grow up, some of the stuff that elk really want to eat. So we've done projects like that. We've also worked on daylighting roads. This particular road is on the Silver's game lands. So daylighting a road just means cutting the trees down on either side of the road. It allows more sunlight to get down to the road bed, and we can plant that with things that will be desirable for wildlife. We make those long, linear wildlife openings. So, one, it's a way for us to access places. We can get our equipment around, but also it's a buffet for wildlife. And these things are working really well. Elk are specifically, are just chomping at the bit, so to speak, to have this opened area. And so we see when things are pushed out, fields are reclaimed, the elk tend to move to those areas pretty quickly. So that's pretty promising. So we got lots more work that we can do on Silver's game land. And hopefully with the new plan that was approved for 12-mile, Forest Service is going to start doing more things there and provide some good elk habitat. Some of the other obstacles that we have to overcome are nuisance animals. So an elk is a 600 to 900 pound long-legged herbivore, and they eat a lot. And some people love them, some people hate them. They become acclimated to people really easily. This is a picture of one that I collared, and she has lost all fear of humans. People feed her out of the car, and she comes right up to them. And so that's is obviously a pretty bad idea in a problem situation. So now we have an elk that is not scared of people. So if she's on somebody's land, and where typically an elk would run off when you yell at it, she may not, because she's so used to people. And then as you can see on the other picture, they can do a lot of damage. This was done by a bull scraping his antlers on this stuff. So, they're all around. They're going to those places that have open land, which is grass, which tends to be people's yards and fields and pastures. And so we've tried really hard to work with landowners and work with folks, try to guide them on things that they can do to mitigate damage or to get elk to move on. So teaching them how to put fences up and things like that. And the hope is that, if we have more groceries on the game lands and Forest Service land, that those elk will hang out up there and not be such a problem in some of these other areas. But like I said, some people absolutely love them, and some people hate them, and some people tolerate them. So we get a little bit of everything. The other question that I get asked about frequently is, when are we going to have a hunting season? And so when elk management was given to the Wildlife Commission, we decided that our goal for elk was going to be to have a sustainable, huntable elk herd. And to that, we have in 2016 passed a rule that essentially builds the framework for us having a season. So when we passed this rule, what we also did is pass a resolution that said, yeah, we've got this rule, but we're going to not give out any permits until we can make sure that we've got a sustainable herd, that it's the appropriate time. We want to have a hunt. We want to allow folks to take elk, but we also want those elk to be around for our children and children's children and so forth. So we want to be really careful about that. Additionally, in 2018, a bill was signed by the governor, essentially making a licensed and non-resident elk license. Again, this is just providing the framework so that when the time comes and we deem that we can afford to have a hunt, we have all the building blocks in place and we can move forward. So what does it look like for when is the right time for us to have a hunt? Well, most states in the eastern United States that have reintroduced elk can have a hunt. Their population has been at least 200. And so we're there now. However, not all of those 200 elk that we have are in places that people can hunt them. So, some of them are on the Park Service. They're not huntable. Some of them are on the Blue Ridge Parkway. They're not huntable. So we'd like to get 200 elk on places that people can hunt them. And of course, we also want to make sure we know how many we have. And so when people ask me, when are we going to have a season? I'd say we're probably not really going to think about it too hard until that project gets completed in 2023. At that point, we'll reevaluate our herd and see if it's the appropriate time to have a hunt. And when we do, it's going to be through a permit, a lottery system kind of thing. Everybody throws their money in and their name goes in a hat. And I foresee maybe 4 or 5 license or permits being given out. So for some reason, I was under the impression that I only had 15 minutes. So I made a 15-minute presentation. So anyway, if you guys have any questions about elk or other things, have at it.
Justin, if you'll stop sharing your screen, then we'll get the gallery view back.
Yes, sir.
Justin, I noticed a reduction in the range of the elk from 2015 to 2018. Do you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, so originally I drew that range, the 2015 range, and I just said, yeah, this is where all the elk are. And then in 2018, I sat down with Park Service biologists, Cherokee biologists, and said, let's try to get this range a little more accurate. And the difference is a big swath is cut off in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. It's all just mature forest, and elk don't go up that way and use it very often. So that's why we pulled that out.
Justin, do you mind if I ask a question that's not elk related too much?
Sure, and I'll make up an answer.
Okay. I'm really disturbed a little bit about the grouse population. And I know that North Carolina is not the only state that's struggling. Even some of the better states like Pennsylvania and Ohio, and maybe even up into the New England states, are dealing with the demise of grouse. There's been talk about the West Nile virus being part of that issue, But I think if we really look close at it, and I think if folks like you would generally say that the habitat is the bigger problem, and habitat for grouse, as I remember it is a lot of cut over stuff. And I really understand that people love to see great big trees and everything else, but I wish you'd maybe, if you feel this way, would talk about the lack of value to the wildlife of great big sterile forests and no cutting and the things like that that really would help a lot of the wildlife, including the grouse, the deer, the elk, and it won't hurt the bear.
Right. So you've hit the nail on the head. And here it's really important to understand all these national forests that you see around us. The Wildlife Commission, we don't have the say-so in what happens on those forests. We are a partner at the table. So we just finished this big revision plan of the Nantahala-Pisgah District, Pisgah Forest Revision Plan. And in that plan, one of the things that we called for was more timber cutting, because you're exactly right. A grouse likes, when you clear cut a piece of forest about 5 to 10 years after, that's really good grouse habitat. And that is the number one reason that we don't have grouse here. And we've seen those declines is that our forests have just matured, into a climax community, essentially. The issue comes when, the U.S. Forest Service has a whole bunch of stakeholders with all sorts of different interests and different ideas on how things are done. So you have some folks that are preservationists, which means they don't want anything done at all. They just want things to happen, quote unquote, naturally. Then you have some folks that, just want big trees. You have some folks that want to sell timber. You have wildlife folks that want to cut timber because it's a habitat management process that's very, very beneficial, as you mentioned, for all these species. So, the good thing about this new Forest Service revision plan that was just accepted and passed, I guess, so to speak, is that in the plan, there's a lot more cutting than there has been in the past. So it looks pretty promising. It's not going to be widespread, clear cut the mountain or anything like that, but there's a lot more timber production slated to happen. The bad thing is that even in the previous plan, there was supposed to be a lot of cutting and it never got done. So we're hoping that the Forest Service will do what we've asked them and what's in that plan.
I just would call on you to be that voice, because I don't think we hear so much about it anymore. And with things like the reintroduction of the elk, and I can see some positive stuff with some of these strips that you've cut and things of that nature, but the small game and some of those birds that I enjoyed so very much, I really don't know that there's a much more than a huntable population now, and it would be a pretty scarce deal. I've hunted in some times when it was right much fun to have a dog and you looked forward to it, but I'm afraid it's not now at all. And I just call on you to say anything that you will to let people know that there still are people that care about grouse, especially.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I am doing that. We are doing that. We want more grouse. And so we are trying our best to get that going. And as I mentioned before with the elk stuff, the Forest Service, while they may not be real excited about grouse habitat, they are really excited about elk habitat. And so that's kind of helping, pushing them along to start cutting some timber. And again, that's going to be good for grouse.
Thank you a lot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Taylor, this is Mark Bumgarner, and I know when the elk were first introduced and they started calving and that type of thing, that the bears were a problem, and they relocated those bears and they came back and that type of thing. what is the procedures now? Are they just ignoring that at this point in time, letting nature take its course, or are they still actively involved in managing the new offspring?
Yeah, so in 2001 and 2002, when the elk were first reintroduced, when they were there in Cataloochee and kind of staying in that area, you're right, bears were hammering them pretty hard, hammering the new calves. So the Park Service decided to relocate bears out of Cataloochee. And two things happened. One, that provided the elk an opportunity to have their calves without being predated upon. But then also, as time went on, the elk started figuring things out a little bit more, where initially they would just have their calves right there in the fields in Cataloochee among all the other elk. The cows started to figure out that, hey, they needed to move away. And so now what we see is that right about the time that a cow is going to give birth, she'll separate from the herd and move off kind of into a more secluded area. She'll have her calf, and then once that calf is able to keep up with her, then she'll move back to the herd. So initially removing those bears helped, and then now the elk have just figured it out on their own. So the park doesn't do any kind of bear removal for elk now.
Thanks.
Sure.
Justin, Cecil, I have a comment and a question. The comment is just a suggestion that on your slides for things to overcome, you need one that says human stupidity on it. It just, whether it's here or Yellowstone, the capacity of human beings to do stupid things around wild animals is just unbelievable. The question, I know being politically correct, you can't address that problem. My question is, do the elk displace deer from their habitat? Because I've noticed when I've been in Cataloochee, I just don't see deer like I used to see them since the elk have done so well.
I don't think they do. I think that they split the space temporally, like in time. So they'll just use it at different times. So I've got a lot of trail cameras out monitoring elk, and I get a lot of deer on it and I get a lot of elk on it. And I've actually seen firsthand over on Silver Game Land I guess it was last year, there was a young buck who went up to a cow elk, it was right around the rut, and was sniffing at her and everything. And then it was almost like if you guys, if you have dogs and you've seen how your dog kind of pounces and jumps forward and then jumps back, that's what this elk was doing with this cow. I mean, this deer was doing with this cow. And meanwhile, the big bull was just hanging out to the side, just watching, kind of like, what are you doing? So I don't think they necessarily displace it. I think they just changed their timing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Justin?
Nobody seems to raise their hand. Justin, appreciate it. Very informative, and we always like to get an update on the elk, since one of our club members was very influential in getting them reestablished in North Carolina back in 2001 and 2. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good week.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin.